Welcome back everybody, my name's Nick930 and this is my review for Beenox's Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled is a full remake of Naughty Dog's 1999 classic, published by Activision and developed by the Canadian game development studio Beenox. This remake includes all the features from the original title, including the single-player adventure mode, all the tracks and characters, and the solid, fast-paced racing design. But to make this remake more appealing to newcomers and fans alike, Beenox has also gone the extra mile and included reimagined versions of all the tracks from Crash Nitro KART, in addition to a competitive online mode, and plans to introduce even more original content in the near future. Nitro Fueled is a faithful recreation of one of my absolute favorite games of all time, but unfortunately isn't without its faults, with a few technical hiccups and odd design choices, making an otherwise perfect remake fall a hair short of being perfect. But before we get into all that, let's first discuss this game's available features, starting with the campaign. In Crash Team Racing, an evil alien named Nitrous Oxide visits Earth and threatens to enslave the planet if he's not challenged and beaten in a racing competition. To determine the fastest racer, the characters of the Crash Bandicoot universe host their own racing tournament to determine the racer that will represent the planet and defeat Oxide. The actual adventure mode itself involves driving around a large hub world and completing races. The hub world is split up into 4 areas, each with their own unique theme and tracks, and you'll need to win 4 races and defeat the area boss for a chance to earn a key and access the next area. After collecting all the game's trophies, you'll then be given an opportunity to face off against Nitrous Oxide himself. This process actually doesn't take very much time at all, and you'll likely blow through this initial part of the adventure mode in less than a few hours. But for players looking to achieve 100%, they'll also need to complete CTR challenges, relic races, crystal challenges, and even full 4-race cups, which can be significantly more challenging. CTR challenges, for example, require players to complete a standard 3-lap race, only they also need to find the 3 letters in CTR, which are often hidden in out-of-reach areas. The relic races function similarly to the time trials in the Insane trilogy, where players will need to complete the level under the par time by maximizing their speed and simultaneously stopping the clock with yellow time crates. Crystal challenges are also based around time, only here, players need to collect all the crystals before time runs out, a challenge that's made even more difficult by the addition of various explosive crates in the later stages. And finally, after completing all the CTR challenges in the game, players will unlock access to the Gem Cups, which require players to place in first after completing 4 different races back to back. Everything about the adventure mode remains exactly the same as the original, assuming you choose to play the game on its classic difficulty. However, the new Nitro Fueled difficulty allows for a little bit more variety, as players can now change their character and other customization options without needing to start a new save file. While this adventure mode certainly gives players something interesting to do, rather than just playing cups and single races from the menu, I do feel that some of the design choices here have resulted in a pretty repetitive experience. It seems incredibly unnecessary to have a podium at the end of each and every race, especially one that can't be skipped until Crash finishes his little dance. My guess is that this segment can't be skipped because the game is still loading in the background, but why can't players just stay within the race that they just played and choose from a menu if they'd like to try a different event? Implementing this kind of change would greatly reduce the amount of time players are stuck waiting in loading screens. Granted, this is exactly how the original game handled as well, and I respect Beenox for staying faithful to the original design. But I also don't see the harm in trying to streamline the process. Next, let's talk about the actual gameplay itself, and exactly how it works. In Crash Team Racing, the player's goal is to complete 3 laps and cross the finish line first. Along the way, players will need to drift around corners, jump off ramps, and blast each other away with an arsenal of zany weapons inspired by the Crash Bandicoot series. While the game's controls are straightforward to start with, understanding and mastering the boosting mechanic is critical for players who wish to stand a chance against the adventure mode's bosses, the challenging time trials, or the even more difficult online player base. Players can boost a number of ways, either by accelerating at the green light at the starting line, landing from a high jump, or, more commonly, by performing drift boosts. To initiate a drift boost, players need to first hop using either the left bumper or right bumper on their controller, and then churn in the direction that they want to drift. While holding the drift button, a meter in the bottom right corner of the screen will begin to fill green and then suddenly red. As soon as this meter turns red, players have the option to press the opposite bumper button to trigger a boost, which will greatly speed up the player. This drift boost can be repeated up to 3 times within a single drift, with the 3rd boost resulting in an even larger speed boost. To translate this boosting mechanic more clearly, players are also signaled when to boost with a few visual cues on the card itself, including the exhaust turning from white to black, and the tires glowing more and more yellow, though for purists, these nitro tires can also be disabled. This technique will require a lot of patience and practice to master, as perfectly timed boosts will result in even longer speed benefits, and linking them with jumps and boost pads can give you a sizable lead if done right. Just like the original game, this drifting and boosting system feels amazing and makes every race feel more involved and technical than any other kart racer out there. Mastering specific tracks and clearing shortcuts with ease is insanely rewarding, and the addition of a new online mode now allows players to truly test their skills against the absolute fastest racers in the world. But this is only one half of the experience. The other half is mastering the many different weapons collected from random crates spread out evenly across each track. Players who successfully smash into a question mark box on the track will be given a randomized weapon, with certain weapons being more common depending on the position of the player relative to the other racers. Players in the lead, for example, are almost always given TNT crates or chemical beakers, which can be placed as traps or used at the last second to block incoming projectiles. Players in the middle of the pack are typically given more offensive weapons like missiles or bombs, the latter of which can be thrown backwards as well. And players in last place are often given the most powerful weapons, including a glowing electric orb that targets the player in first, a clock that slows everyone down, or the Aku Aku mask, which grants the player temporary invincibility and speed. To expand on this further, CTR also makes smart use of its collectible Wumpa Fruit to enhance the experience. After collecting 10 Wumpa Fruit, the player's kart will move slightly faster, boosts will last longer, and any collected weapons will feature new boosted effects. The green beakers, for example, will now be red, and will cause tiny rain clouds to follow a player, slowing them down and shuffling their weapons. This mechanic adds a nice layer of depth to the vehicle combat, and often requires players to choose carefully whether they want a weapon, or risk skipping a weapon in order to collect extra fruit. This weapon system feels incredibly well balanced, and never feels excessive like it can in other kart racing games. Though I was surprised by how skilled some of the bots were with certain weapons, especially the bowling bombs. In fact, the AI in general seems to be far more competitive than the original game. Even on the medium difficulty, I found that bots were only a single mistake behind me, and once a bot managed to break away from the group, they were nearly impossible to catch up to. While this difficulty seems to be well suited for my own skill level, I feel that this game may be a bit too difficult starting off, and perhaps some sort of tutorial mode or even built-in videos might be a good way to introduce newcomers to the gameplay. Players can race across all 18 tracks from the original Crash Team Racing, faithfully recreated with identical layouts but overhauled visuals. Tracks range from sunny beaches, frozen glaciers and ruins, to more industrial places like labs, mines, and space stations. In addition to these 18 classic tracks, Nitro Fueled also features 13 tracks from Crash Nitro Kart, though these tracks aren't quite as impressive. The environments of these tracks are not nearly as detailed as the first 18 tracks, and Nitro Kart's signature magnetic upside-down wall driving has been stripped away entirely. Tracks like Tiny Temple, which previously offered an inverted spiral, are now reworked with less interesting flat surfaces. This is certainly disappointing, but at the same time, the actual flow of these courses seems to be much more consistent with the design of the courses from the original game. For players looking for a little bit more variety, Nitro Fueled offers several alternative modes to play both alone and with friends, including cups, challenges, time trials, and battle mode. And just like the standard racetracks, the battle mode for Crash Team Racing includes all the levels from both Crash Team Racing and Nitro Kart. Crash Team Racing, as the name would suggest, is a racing game featuring Crash Bandicoot characters. Players can choose from 8 default characters, each belonging to one of 3 different difficulty groups. There's the beginner characters like Polar and Purra, who have lower speeds but decent acceleration and excellent churning. There's the intermediate characters like Crash and Cortex, whose stats are fairly balanced. And then there's the advanced characters like Tiny, whose high speed sacrifices his ability to make tight turns. Choosing the right character to start with is very important and can greatly impact your ability to learn how to play, so I highly recommend starting with either a beginner or intermediate character. More characters can of course be unlocked either by defeating bosses in the game's adventure mode, or by purchasing them with in-game currency called Wumpa Coins from the Pit Stop menu. Players can also input a cheat code on the main menu to unlock Penta Penguin, just like the original game, though his stats are not maxed out like they were in some of the original versions. Also new to Nitro Fueled is the ability to customize both your characters and the karts that they drive. Players can choose from a handful of unlockable skins for most of the characters. While some of these reskins are great, most of them are pretty uninspired. and simply rework the color scheme of the character's skin and clothes. Some of the best character customizations can be purchased using Wumpa coins from the pit stop, but the prices on these items will likely require a tiny bit of grinding to afford. And I say a tiny bit because Wumpa coins, at least at the time of writing this, are pretty easy to come by. You'll earn coins completing any of the single-player races, and will earn even more coins just for finishing a race in online. If you really want one of the cool limited-time skins in the pit stop, you can just play a few races to unlock it within an hour or so, and none of this content will ever affect the actual gameplay, as the stat combinations of unlocked characters are identical to various characters in the starting lineup. This customization extends to the karts as well, with players able to swap out the body, tires, and even adjust the color and decals. Finally, let's talk about the visuals. As I mentioned in greater detail in my comparison video, Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled has improved upon the original 1999 game in just about every way. The textures, lighting, shadows, and character model designs have all been faithfully restored and look amazing across all platforms, especially the more powerful Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro. All of the level environments are filled with fun additions, like characters dancing off to the side of the track or getting stuck in ridiculous situations. I definitely recommend driving around sometimes slowly around the tracks, just to get a better appreciation for all the work that went into revitalizing these classic areas, as they're all pretty amazing. Some levels that were previously pretty dull, like Mystery Caves, now feature dinosaurs roaming around off to the side. There's also a bunch of Easter eggs from other Crash games, including the dragon from Wrath of Cortex, and a stained glass window of Cortex cross-dressing into insanity. This just goes to show the deep respect this developer has for the source material, and I'm sure fans will be pleased with the results. Like I said before, the environments in the Nitro Kart levels aren't quite as impressive. There's almost no activity in the backgrounds, and the environments feel less interesting than the original 2003 game's environments did, especially removing the blizzard effects from Meteor Gorge. When playing in multiplayer modes, some of the less noticeable details are also stripped away, including some of the various environmental characters, and details like the more defined grass effects. This becomes even more noticeable on the Nintendo Switch version of the game, that not only struggles to maintain the locked 30 FPS, but looks noticeably worse than the other platforms. Speaking of performance, all versions of Nitro Fueled do target a locked 30 frames per second, even on the powerful Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro versions of the game. While this is definitely a bit disappointing considering similar games are targeting 60 FPS now, this is still consistent with the target framerate in the original game. However, I did find that the framerate tends to miss this 30 FPS target on occasion, especially around the turtles and mystery caves. Another major problem that seems to exist for all versions is the terrible load times. Considering how much this game is stuck loading, especially when jumping in and out of races in adventure mode, the load times can be pretty annoying. But overall, despite the load issues and the disappointing 30 FPS lock, Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled is an amazing game. Not only does it retain the excellent gameplay mechanics that fans fell in love with, but it also expands on them, with new cosmetic customization, new tracks, and a competitive online mode. Everything that made the original game special has been brought back to life with a beautiful visual overhaul, in line with what Vicarious Visions was able to accomplish with the Insane trilogy. For players worried about the changes to the soundtrack, you can rest easy. Not only did Beenox recreate each song from both games, but they also included an option in the menu to swap back to the original OST with a simple slider. It's small additions like this that truly show that Beenox respects the original games, and wants players to continue to enjoy this excellent kart racing game as it was originally intended, only with improved graphics and some nice quality of life improvements. On top of this, Beenox also plans on releasing additional content in the future, including completely original tracks, and even bringing characters like Spyro the Dragon into the mix. Still, even with the content already available in the package, I think Beenox outdid themselves. With over 30 tracks, all the classic racers, and more to come, this feels like the absolute best way to reintroduce Crash Team Racing to fans and newcomers alike. But what do you guys think? Are you enjoying this remake of Crash Team Racing? What do you want to see Beenox add or improve upon? Let me know in the comments section, and be sure to check out my history of Crash Bandicoot video linked at the end. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos posted every week.